Yeah, take two. Hopefully this sounds all right. Let me know, Dr. Pepper. What is up? You know, look, sometimes sometimes it's a tricky thing, okay? Sometimes it takes a little bit of effort in order to get this thing started. All right, good sound, good. Well, you know, this is a much improved thing. Too, I've got 3 videos of it. Look, my mistake, okay? I was in a bad spot. I didn't think it was going to go live like straight away, but it kicked in, and then that was too much. So yeah, we're rocking the Rode wireless mics. You may remember these from Root. We tried to get these to work for Root, but they didn't work really that well for Root. So I returned all of them but one, and I figured I could use it for these sort of occasions when I need an opportunity to, you know, talk while I'm on vacation, maybe on a cruise ship, maybe here in Las Vegas. How is the trip? Well, I'm up on gambling, but of course, we go out to dinners, we see some shows, so that comes out of the money. So overall, after nearly 3 days here, I'm only down a couple $100, and that includes food and that includes shows. So I'm up on gambling, down overall, but that's really, really good. Although my buddy, who I came with, he just hit 2 massive bonuses on the Journey to Planet Moolah slot machine just a few minutes ago, back to back. It was completely insane, and he's now up $3,000 or $4,000. So, how many D20s do I have in my pocket? None, none. Yeah, let's see. So tonight we're going to another steakhouse, a place called Bavette's, a place we really, really like, and. So let's see, Thursday night we get in late, and we usually go to a place called Secret Pizza. It's over in the Cosmopolitan. It's a pizza restaurant, open rate, super late, and there's no sign. There's it's not on any of the, overhead signs that tell you where to go. There's no sign showing you that there's even a restaurant there. It's like a hallway that just goes down, and then it turns into a pizza joint. It's really cool. So we go there, and then Friday night we went to Heritage Steakhouse over at the Mirage, which used to be a favorite of mine, but the quality has been a little sus lately. Some of our favorite dishes have rotated off of the menu. Not as big of a fan. Last night we went to a really nice Italian place, and I got a really, really nice, basically just a bolognese sauce with some pasta and some pork, some pork rib or pork meat, pork belly. It was really good. And then tonight we're back at the steakhouse. So. Random Gambo stream. Yeah, I'll be like one of those YouTubers that, they just go and gamble. But, I'll tell you this, Vegas knows how to do Christmas. It is so cool here. Let me flip this around. It is so awesome. This is just the Aria Hotel and Casino. All of the hotels, the Bellagio and all that other stuff. It's just done so nicely for the holidays. It's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. So, anyways, I came out here. Matt Colville started his Kickstarter. I think I'm not saying I was the millionth dollar, but it was really close. If it wasn't me, I was within a couple dollars of it. Backed that right away. Huge success. I think we all knew that Matt Colville's had this following and had this presence within the sort of 5E sphere, but 2 million I think he did in his first day. Who knows where it is now? I imagine it's slowed down considerably. That was unexpected, and it was really, really, really surprising. And I think it's also a little telling that how many people paid for the premium version of the game, which I think was really the Ajax edition. And so much so that they're basically doing a second wave printing of the Ajax because they want to make up for all that demand. That's crazy to me. It's almost up to 3 million, GM Scott. Wow. That is an insane amount. And again, I get it, Matt Colville, but it just shows you what is capable when you have, that you spend the time, you build the audience, you do a couple of Kickstarters to show people what you're made of, that you can deliver, the quality of your work. But it's just, so, he followed the formula perfectly, right? A guy with industry insider chops, right? So there's a degree of legitimacy there. A real professional, not just like I would consider myself a professional amateur, right? But this is a real professional. And combine that with years of building up this base of people who kind of buy into your vision of what tabletop role-playing games could be or should be, and a couple of Kickstarters supporting the world's greatest role-playing game that did fairly well to establish credibility, and then Flea Mortals, which I think was a fantastic book. I've looked through it. I might do a stream on it sometime. Aaron loved it. I know Aaron loved it. I loved it. Obviously, it's very 4E inspired. And so, and that, Pepper, that's a really interesting thing about Matt. And this game, this MCDM game, it's almost saying the quiet part out loud. In his spiel about what this game is about, I mean, he is coming out and saying, look, our game is not about exploration, and it's not about tracking torches, and it's not about tracking rations. It's not, you might go into a dungeon, but because it's a kick-ass place to have an adventure, not because you want to do the dungeon crawling thing. It is taking an approach which I think really mirrors the way that most people out there are playing role-playing games today, which is, we think of, and there's a couple different ways to view this, right? We think of the 3 pillars of gameplay. Pathfinder 2 calls them, encounter mode, exploration mode, and then downtime mode. Which is, and downtime we usually think of people, crafting or doing some sort of like spell research or magical item creation or something like that. But, and in 5th edition, they call the 3 pillars of play combat. And let's be clear, when we say encounter in Pathfinder 2, we really just mean combat most of the time. But they mean combat, social, and exploration. But in my experience, the way that those 3 pillars of play really manifest themselves is as combat, that's one pillar. Then there's sort of what Legend of the Five Rings would call a narrative scene, which is like a scene where you're exploring, you're doing dice rolls, you're maybe on the adventure, okay? But it's, it's not as structured as combat would be. There's no initiative order. And then the 3rd pillar, I actually think in most groups, isn't social, it isn't downtime, it's fluffy bullshit time. I think there's a lot of groups out there who basically spend the majority of their time at a role-playing game session ignoring the exploration, pillar, and basically just doing combat, separated by bouts of fluffy bullshit time, back to combat, maybe another combat, more fluffy bullshit time, rinse, repeat. And that is the way that they play. And so I actually think that in this way, fluffy bullshit time has become almost a pillar of play, whatever that means. And the fact of the matter is, most people, I don't video games much anymore, right? And so, but I had an opportunity a couple years ago during COVID. A buddy of mine came and lived with me as a housemate. I needed some help with the bills, and he wanted to get out of San Francisco. And he played a ton of these video games while he was with me. God of War and Persona and all these other games. And he's always liked, more video games more than me. And I watched some of them. I watched him play some of them. And what I discovered, basically, is that these video games were, by and large, really, really long movies, right? Essentially, a set of really long cutscenes interspersed with parts where you had to fight. And I think that's how most people are playing their 5th edition campaigns today. I think most people are playing 5th edition as we're just kind of telling stories. We might be making some checks, but when people make checks in these moments, it's not any part of any sort of mechanical framework or structure, the way that it would be in, say, Powered by the Apocalypse or Blades in the Dark. You're kind of just making checks because it feels like it's the right thing to do. And a lot of times these are what I call, these are what I call bogus checks anyways. Like the DM is just kind of having you roll dice just to roll dice. Like the outcome doesn't really matter. You're really just, the way people are playing is, I don't know, kind of like Critical Role, right? What does Critical Role do? They will spend an inordinate amount of time in character talking about nothing, or talking about the story, or talking about their suspicions, and just, there's no real mechanical element there. There might be the occasional dice roll for, recall knowledge, or see what you know, but for the most part, by and large, people are just kind of fluffing. They're just kind of being FBT. And then a combat breaks out, and suddenly it's super, super mechanical. And that, I think, is the way that a lot of people play these games. They ignore the entire middle part. They ignore exploration. They ignore this idea of these kind of social structures, because most people would almost rather handle that with just hand-wavy FBT. And so where Matt Colville is really interesting, if you read his thing, is he basically says, I think he's basically acknowledging the fact that the only thing that this game is going to do mechanically is kind of give you rules for fights and have some generic stuff on top of that, but basically not even try to pretend like that stuff is important to their game. In fact, they come out with that very clear cut and say, this is not a hex crawling game. If you want to play a hex crawling game, go play Forbidden Lands. This is not a dungeon crawling game. If you want to play a dungeon crawling game, go play Shadowdark. That is a big statement to be made, because, something I've said on this channel many, many times. I love it when I do a first look and I'm evaluating games, I go back to Jared Sorensen's 3 questions. And I ask myself, what is this game trying to be? What niche is this game trying to solve, or problem is this game trying to solve? What niche is it trying to fill? And most of the time, the answer is, I don't know, everything. I want to make a game that could be everything to anyone ever. I want to make a fantasy role-playing game that you could use for dungeon crawling, or you could use for political intrigue, or you could use for modern horror, or you could use for sci-fi. It's a fantasy role-playing game, by the way. It could be used for combat-heavy games. It could be used for non-combat games entirely. It could, and the fact of the matter is, when you try to do everything, you kind of just end up being bad at everything, or at the very least, mediocre, or at the very best, mediocre. And so that's been the trait. And the reason is because that way you technically appeal to the widest possible range of possible customers and consumers. You lose audience members when you come out of the gate and kind of sort of say, my game's not for you. Oh, you're into classic dungeon crawling and tracking torches and counting every copper? My game isn't for you. There are some great games that are. You should go play them. But if you try to take my game and play it like that, you're just going to be disappointed. And this goes back to, no doubt, the Morrow 20 questions, right? Where he says, as a game designer, if you had 100 people polled, would you rather have 100 people tell you that they rate your game a 7 out of 10, which is better than ever, better than 5, right? Or would you rather have 50 of them say 10 out of 10 and 50 of them say 0 out of 10? And Mark Rosewater, one of the best and most famous and most successful game designers of all time, says unequivocally, you want 50 10s and 50 zeros. And even though the average of that is lower than 100 people rating it 7 out of 10, the fact of the matter is games work better when people are heavily bought in to the core premise. And then as a game designer and a game developer, you have clarity around how you want to deliver your product. Now, I don't know what this Matt Colville DM game is going to be. In fact, I think it's kind of outrageous that they launched under the name MCDM. I get it, name to be determined, but come on, guys, just come up with a name. But I really appreciate that they are they're setting a line on the ground, and they're saying this is what our game's about. And not just that, they are coming out and saying this is what our game is not about. They are explicitly excluding certain types and tenets of play. That's something that I really respect. Let's see here. What do we got in chat? So all in all, very excited. I backed it. Smith backed it. Bob backed it. we backed at the $135 level. I mean, I love the Flea Mortals book. Have the PDF, but not the hard. Smith has the hardback, and I think it looks awesome. And again, I mean, look at some of the, the other thing is too, between me and you, is in a way, I have no idea what this game is actually going to be. And I would never be so bold as to say that I assume that Matt Colville, James Intrascano or whatever, James Intrasco, are like watching anything that the Knights of Last Call put out. But I think it's funny how things that I have been really searching for an answer for, or talking about, or complaining about, and complaining is the wrong word, right? It's more of a philosophical discussion. One of our earliest videos that actually had some of the biggest like to dislike ratios, back when you could actually just, meaningfully dislike a video on YouTube, was we did a video called Missing is Not Fun. And, a lot of people came in there and say, oh, you just want to give the PCs everything. And it's like, no, you didn't watch the video, obviously. It wasn't necessarily that we thought that things shouldn't have consequences. The whole video, the whole talk was basically just the way that RPGs are structured, the idea that you would go and, wait for your turn and then roll low and then nothing happens as a result of you taking your turn is problematic. And this came out of my experiences, not just from D&D, but from board games that suffer from this similar problem, right? Where you have this problem of output randomness. You make a decision, maybe even the best decision, but then because some dice decided to not cooperate, nothing happens. And as a result of that behavior and structure of games, and by the way, pretty much every D20 game falls into this, because usually you get to do one main thing on your turn, and that one main thing on your turn typically involves a die roll, either from you or from your opponent. And then depending on how that die roll goes, either nothing happens or everything happens. And what that creates, naturally, is an incentive, right? A very strong incentive for players to min-max, to car op, right? Because you don't want to do nothing. Psychologically, you don't want to do nothing. But even, it's not just a selfish thing. It's not just about you being like, oh, I want to have fun. It's also like, I feel like I have a duty or a responsibility to my team to sort of pull my weight and be the guy who delivers. And so if you're like, well, if my cleric or if my barbarian, if she can't deliver the damage, right? If my champion, if she can't do what she's trying to do, then I feel like I'm letting everybody else down. And so you're like, well, in this game, what do I need to do in order to maximize my odds? Well, the answer is the same. Stats, buff numbers, find every number you can, buff, right? Because that's going to give you the best chance. Because, we play role-playing games to make a difference. We play role-playing games to enact change, right? We play role-playing games because we see a fictional problem and we want to apply our characters vis-a-vis us to that problem. And, input randomness basically says it gets in the way of that. So anyways, Matt Colville in this game is basically you can't miss, more or less. It's not a question of, will you succeed? It's a question of how much will you succeed and to what degree do you succeed? So there's other things, and again, I don't know how much these people were inspired by the same things I have been, because again, these aren't my designs by any stretch of the imagination. But for many years, and these are games that I have talked about on this channel for years, I have dreamed of basically taking 4th edition D&D, Strike, which is a very small press PDF indie game, and Iron Heroes, which was a Malhovic Press, Monty Cook's company, book written by Mike Merles back in the 3.5 era, and basically combining those 3 games into one game. And there are so many elements of those games that I am seeing in the previews for the MCDM game. So on one hand, super excited. On the other hand, painfully, pitifully bitter and resentful, because it's like, no, that's the game I wanted to make. I mean, obviously, I'm sure they're going to take different directions with it, but, it is what it is. Let's see who we got here. Just reading through the chat here. I got at the bottom. Not quite as nice of a setup as my normal home setup. Let's see. Let's see. FBT is the core pillar of role-playing, says Beowulf. London says Beowulf. Those are fighting words. It's like cutscenes, but you actually get to participate. That's actually true. Yeah, all the Lord High Summoner, all the modern big-ticket video games are basically extended cutscenes or movies interspersed with what essentially is combat, by and large. And what other gameplay elements are there really? You know, maybe they occasionally have the sort of Legend of Zelda style puzzle where you have to push some blocks around. But by and large, most of these games is you fight some stuff, you push a bunch of buttons, you do your cool combo wombo powers, and then it's back into a cutscene and rinse, repeat until you're done. Let's see. Hoyrit says, to be honest, FBT is the best part of Critical Role. I skip the combat scenes mostly. And it's funny that you say that, Hoyrit, because I remember the first time that as a group of people, we were more interested in the story than the game was with Xenosaga, right? I think it was for PS2, right? It was the epic, saga of, Xenosaga, Der Will zu Damak, and also Sprach Zarathustra, that whole series of Xenosaga. And all we really wanted to see was the story. But the game was the annoying part in the middle that we had to keep playing. And somebody, and this was in the very early days of the internet, had on like Kazaa or like LimeWire, basically all of the cutscenes for the movie, for the game. And so basically with little montages, with like little vignettes that would show, and then you go through this dungeon and you fight a bunch of stuff and you fight a cool monster and now we're back to the cutscene. And we used to love watching that because we didn't want to play the game. We just wanted to know what the story was, right? It was basically, the movie was more interesting than the game. Let's see. Cooperative Waffles is in here. Rolling back, she'll catch up. Awesome. Hopefully you've caught up. Yes. Kyle says this is how they play 5th edition. We do some exploration and intrigue, but there's a good amount of FBT. So is it a 3-hour live stream from the Vegas floor? Actually, we started off in the Aria, and now we have, which is an MGM property, and now we have made our way over to the Park MGM, which is connected to the Golden Knights Stadium, Park Stadium. And the Park MGM is like one of our favorite casinos on the Strip, because I don't smoke, neither do my friends, and this is the first fully smoke-free casino in Las Vegas. And there are a lot of people here. Let's see. Let's see here. London wants to know how it handles reloading crossbows. My guess is it doesn't. Sorry, just catching up. GM Scott says, I love the Iron Heroes idea of, that. And for those of you who don't know, Iron Heroes, the idea was that each class had a different pool of tokens that they could accumulate. They started the fight at 0, and there were different actions that they could take that were in line with that class's fantasy and role and feel. And when you did the thing, and when you did the thing really well, you got tokens. And as your token pool built up, guess what? New cool powers came online that you could spend those tokens for in order to get a really cool effect. Now, Iron Heroes, this isn't a knock on Pathfinder 2, but the special things that you could use your tokens for in Iron Heroes were more reminiscent of a Pathfinder 2 feat, class feat. Maybe not a level 1 class feat, but maybe like, sudden charge, which I guess is a level 1 class feat. Sudden charge, silencing strike, whirlwind strike, all those ones from Pathfinder 2 that are, kind of flashy and kind of big. Iron Heroes had you working up to those. And it was nice, but it didn't really feel like it was this big deal, because at the time when that came out, or right around where that came out, We also got Book of Nine Swords. Now those were cool powers. And so immediately I was like, oh, I want a game where you build up token points to do that thing. And then 4th edition came out, and that seemed to sort of solve the problem, because 4th edition had all these really, really cool problems, and so we were playing 4th edition. The problem with 4th edition was that, you know, the 15-minute adventuring day is still a thing. There's nothing that prevents you from using your most powerful power on the first round of combat. In fact, you should use your most powerful thing on the first round of combat, because that's going to have the biggest influence, have the best chance to have the longest duration if it's like some sort of buff or something like that. So it didn't really solve that problem. So this is where the Iron Heroes approach kind of comes in, and I get really, really excited. Taking a seat here. Lord High Summoner says, the first time I saw the You Never Miss design, thought I really railed against it, but the more I digest it, the more I am intrigued by it. Let's see here. Let's see here. Xenosaga was Pathfinder, was PS2. Ben is here. Ben says the sound is good. Yeah, so it's really interesting. I bought this right at the end because I was trying to solve the problem that we were having with the lavalier mics, which was that everybody was clipping. They were just really hot and really sensitive. And right as we did it at that one session where very famously we took a 15-minute break and we pulled out all the microphones en route. And I ordered this one because I still thought I was going to try to make this work. And then I said, okay, I'm not going to make it work. But this is the new line of Rode wireless mics that has basically a intelligent auto-sensing gain setting. And it basically is dynamically changing the gain depending on the environment and a bunch of other stuff. It's supposed to be pretty dang good, so I like it. Let's see. Alpha Strike is the best strike. Yeah, so again, the other thing that this game is trying to do is basically that I'm envisioning is it's setting up a scenario like 4th edition where you are going to basically be able to kind of just keep going, and you're going to have these recoveries, which are basically healing surges, and they're trying to make a combat game, and they basically are saying the way that people are playing their games is they're playing basically half the game you don't even need a game system for, because they're not doing anything mechanical. They're just sitting around talking in character, talking to NPCs, talking with each other, or maybe they're not in character. Maybe they're just discussing things as a play group, right? Should we support the Southern rebels, or do we think the Northern Lords actually have legitimacy here, and that the Southern rebels are actually more of like a terrorist group, right? And that's maybe not even in character. That's just like us as a gaming group sitting around talking about the game, which I love. That's like one of my favorite things to do. I'd rather sit around the table with my friends and talk about the game as Derek, than I would rather sit around the table and watch a bunch of really bad actors try to talk to each other in character. That to me is hyper cringe, even for me. And I think a few moments of in-character dialogue are fine, but by and large, I like to just talk about the game. Anyways, point is, you don't need a mechanical system for that. So why bother making one, right? And Matt Colville basically says, D&D is bound by these strictures of the sacred cows, and so it doesn't really have much of an option. Yeah, Blazing Pie. It is very, very, very 4E inspired, and rightfully so. Matt Colville really likes 4th edition, and there's a lot of stuff that 4th edition does that I think is great. The other part, which he took, which I think is, I haven't read through everything because it kind of came out just as I was going to Vegas. What I really liked from Strike RPG, and this isn't, sorry, if you've never played 4th edition, this is a little bit tough, but in Strike, you actually had 2 different things that you picked for your character. There were classes, and then there were roles. So a class might be something like Necromancer. But you could choose the Necromancer class and then choose from the next part of the book your role. It could be defender, it could be striker, it could be blaster, it could be leader. And so there were different, the class would give you powers that were very themed to the class. The role would give you powers that were very tied to the role. And so, you can imagine like in like EverQuest or WoW terms, right? Like a necromancer defender is sort of like a shadow knight, right? Or, a dark blade, a dark knight from Final Fantasy. It's this like, character who's heavily armored and relies on like shadow powers. But you could also take necromancer and apply it to striker. And maybe suddenly you have this sort of ephemeral, incorporeal ghost assassin, right? And you could apply necromancer to controller. And now suddenly you have a, kind of the Diablo necromancer who's summoning, walls of dead creatures and skeletal arms busting out of the ground to grab people and immobilize them. And I thought it was a really, really cool way. It was a little underbaked because Strike in general was a little underbaked, but the idea was really, really, really solid. And it's something that I always wanted to do. So very, again, excited, but also jealous that like Colville is going to be doing it. I mean, at the end of the day, if they can deliver, great. Now again, that's not the perfect game that I want to play for all time. You know why? The things that he's explicitly saying he wants to ignore, things like exploration, hexploration, dungeon crawling, those are elements of the games that I do really like. So this can't be my one true game, but it does look pretty interesting. Let's see here. Boothby says, I have enough trouble trying to think of something to say in real life, let alone pull out compelling improvised monologue out of my butt. Absolutely. And to be completely honest with you, Smith is like the best at it that I've ever seen, in my personal experience, even going to conventions and everything like that. He is very, very, very good at that. He's a naturally creative guy, has sort of, is read infinite novels of fantasy and the genre, has watched all the movies, all the video games. So he's got this library of knowledge to just sort of be able to pull this shit out of his ass. And it works out really well, most of the time. But most people are not that. Even I would say I'm not even that. So, by and large, it's pretty tough. Let's see. London says, I love that. The notion that a wildsman could be split into druid, ranger, etc. based on role. Exactly, London. It's a little bit kind of like Fabula Ultima, right? Where your class isn't really your class. Your class is just a suite of abilities. And one character might take some abilities from a class and another couple abilities from a different class. And your character is this amalgamation of different abilities. And that's what makes you unique and that's what makes you interesting. So it's kind of a similar idea, but I really do think that, that was a really clever bit of design. And I really like the idea of that. And again, it looks like the Matt Colville DM with these kits is going to do something very similar. Again, I can't believe they didn't pick a name before going with their backer kit, and they're doing $3 million on the MCDM RPG. I thought that was a joke when I first saw that, like someone mentioning it, and I was like, oh, haha, like the name really bad or something, and you're just going to call it the MCDM RPG? No, that's what they're launching with. Okay, that's pretty tough. Let's see. Pumpkin says, all right, fine, damn it. I backed the MCDM RPG. You didn't have to. I mean, I'm just saying, there's a lot. I think that it's going to be very interesting there. Again, I love 4th edition D&D. I think people should play 4th edition D&D, especially if what you want is a more intriguing and interesting tactical game. I think it's a more tactical game than even Pathfinder 2nd edition. But, it's 15 years old, and we've learned a lot of things about how games can and should work. And, 4E never got a chance to really get the development life cycle that so many other games have gotten because of the GSL. So, and yes, you do need to read Strike, Pumpkin. GM Scott says, Matt also said he would like to make games like that, Hexploration, Dungeon Crawl, and so on, but this game is not that. And again, I really respect the hell out of this. London, absolutely. And I think you've really hit the key point here, which is you should never, I think. Now, London, this almost gets into like mechanicizing role-playing. If you mechanicize role-playing, does it no longer count for you kind of discussion? But, and again, this is not me shitting on people. I think when you're making a game, you should make the good choices the fun choices. If the fun choice is boring, okay, or if the exciting and fun choice is shit, you have a problem. Because you've created a weird set of perverse incentives, where if you want to do well at the game, you have to choose a boring option. And if you want your character to seem cool and have all sorts of cool fun and flavor, you have to be shit. Now, the reason why I said this is like a hot take is, I honestly, personally think that there's a lot of people who kind of get off on making bad choices for their character, because that to them legitimizes how cool and role-playing, I'm a role player, right? The idea that their character could be, you know, this is a Stormwind fallacy, right? Which is the only way that, Stormwind fallacy is the only way that you can, if you have a strong character, then you can't be a good role player, right? This is where the joke about the fighter in Pathfinder 2 being bad at role playing comes from, right? Because it's a good character class, strong character class. And so I think that some people are like, oh, I can't be role playing. My character, I didn't make a character role playing based decision unless the choice that I made in the game is shit. And that really informs their decision. And so the idea that you give a game where it's like, hey, there's 5 options for you, or 6 options, 7 options, and you know what? They're all pretty dang good. Your character is going to be really effective. And then I think that some people go, oh, I want to be terrible because that's going to make me stand out and feel important. So that was the hot take part of it. Anyways, let's see. Pumpkins being dramatic, nothing there. They want to use. Wait, GM Scott, did they really want to use Powered by the 4th edition? No, okay, that was your joke, okay. George had a Warden Shifter in 4E. They got better when bloodied. Yeah, Shifter was a cool class, or a cool race. If the fun option isn't good, it's no longer fun often. Yes and no. Fun can mean, again, remember, we learn. Fun does not mean, interesting does not mean fun. Fun does not mean interesting. And sometimes the fun option is also not necessarily the most powerful one. That alone isn't a condemnation of the game. The problem is when you design a game to have very exacting standards, we might say tight math. And again, it goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the stream about the missing is not fun. If you choosing an option that seems fun and flavorful and cool, but it's going to end up with your character being woefully bad at the game, which, quite frankly, is designed around your character being at a certain level of performance, then you're going to have problems. And you're going to have to basically, you get this weird sort of masochistic enjoyment where, you've got some character who is just god-awful, but the player really enjoys how bad they are at the game because of the sacrifices that they were willing to make in the name of their character's identity, right? But that to me isn't even realistic either, because that's not the way people work. So, it's kind of weird. Let's see. London was starting to disagree with me, but does say that the concept of making the fun good and the good fun is just solid. And again, there's going to be gradients. Different things are going to mean different things to different people. But if we really truly want to get rid of ivory tower design, and I, by the way, do not think that that's a bad thing. I think getting rid of ivory tower design is a laudable goal. This isn't Magic the Gathering. When you play Magic the Gathering, part of the enjoyment of the game is here's a new set of cards, 300 cards. Some of them are shit. Some of them are great. Some of them are broken. Some of them are maybe broken if you can figure out some weird way to combine them with other cards. It's a puzzle that you're trying to solve because it's a rotating format, because it's a competitive format, because in 3 months, a new set is going to be coming out. RPGs are not that. Your game comes out, it's got, 10 feats to pick from or something. And if 2 of them or 1 of them is just way better than the other ones, then you have a problem. And I think that, again, you're never going to be able to make, there is always going to be something that is technically the best, maybe, but if you can make them dang close, and then you also minimize the price of the failure state, then you start to get somewhere that I think is a lot more interesting, Let's see. Let's see. Blazing says, we had a guy who only used a base blowgun and net in first edition. Oh, sorry, net in 5e, I think you meant. Both horrible options in 5e. It was painful, not because he purposely made a bad character. Right. London says, what you got to do is get together a whole table of people who want to play shitty characters together, lower the difficulty, and then in unison all say, what are we even doing here? That is one way you could go about doing it. I don't know if it's a great way to do it. Splat is just rotations for RPGs. I mean, if that was true, there's a whole new RPG concept, Pumpkin, right? Like, you're like, oh, we're playing D&D 6th edition. Oh, what format do you play? Oh, we play standard. So only the most recent two books that have been released are valid character options. And when a new book comes out, you have to rebuild your character to the new options in the new book. Talk about increasing player sales. Or better yet, sell packs of cards that have feats in them, and you can only take a feat onto your character if you have the card. And then those cards every 3 to 6 months or 12 months will rotate out, and new sets of cards will get printed that you have to rotate them in. So, oh, somebody just won at craps.
You walking or what? You walking or working?
Let's see here. George says, and people apparently are agreeing with you, George, says a PC should be fun and effective. Effective does not mean so optimal that you're min-maxed within an inch of your life. George, completely agree. I think you should be, effective does not mean optimal. And, you know, obviously an optimal character is effective. But by and large, yes, I don't mean that every character needs to be optimal in all situations. In fact, the best design is one in which your character is very strong in some situations and maybe not as strong in others, but not useless. I don't ever want a player to literally not be able to do anything in a given, scenario or a given encounter. So I don't like that a lot. Let's see. Cephalopod says, I think the new PF2E voluntary flaw rule is so weird. No bonus in return, just a penalty for flavor. And I completely agree with you. I don't understand how, like, making your character bad at the game, right? This is literally the Stormwind fallacy. Go look it up. The idea that by making my character weaker, I'm role-playing somehow more. I'm a better role player. This character, this PC, is more equipped mechanically to role play because they're shit. It's a fallacy. That's why it's called the Stormwind fallacy, because it doesn't make sense and it doesn't hold up. It doesn't really make anything sense. Oh yeah, Isaiah, the CC RPG. Yes, I love it. The TTC RPG, the tabletop collectible role-playing game. TTC RPG. And of course, yes, make it digital. Oh, we could have loot boxes. Then you have to grind in your adventures. And at the end of the adventure, there's a code. You get a redemption code. And then you got to redeem it. And then maybe you'll get a really cool item. But of course, there's different versions of that item. And so then you have to run the adventure again to try to get a better statted version of that item. Yeah, Official Third Sky. Well, Official Third Sky, I used to spend a lot of money to keep up with Standard, okay? A lot of money. Absolutely. Craps, well, okay, let me start off by saying, Craps is my favorite game, but it has betrayed me many, many, many times over the last couple years. This trip started off with one of the best Craps throws that we've ever had. My buddy, there's 3 of us here. My buddy went maybe 30 rolls without a 7. 30 rolls without a 7. Insanity. just money. We made like, I don't know, 1,500 or something each. It was a great shoot. We could have made more. We just somehow didn't. We were like playing scared. Anyways, but it's been brutal. The craps gods giveth and taketh away. But absolutely, the reason I love craps is because I love rolling dice. Who doesn't? That's 100%. You get to grab the dice, put your, But it's funny though, when you think about it, because we think of craps as like, oh, it's a stupid gambling game. The closest analog to D20, right? Choose what you're gonna do, roll a die, roll good things happen. Roll bad things happen. Is craps. Like, the main mechanic of most RPG systems is just as complex, just as interesting perhaps, as craps, where you're just literally generating random numbers to see if you win or lose. So it's an interesting kind of take on that. Let's see. Players who self-nerf to make things interesting just need to play with a mixed success game like PBTA. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if there's like an exact answer for it, but it's something like that. Let's see here. Derek, this is $1 billion idea. The CCTRPG. That go figure. That's my great contribution to the hobby that I love so much. Just blatant, horrible capitalism. Let's see here. Ian, what about a procedurally generated seed-based TTRPG? Feed XY coordinates into a generator and it pumps out a location. Tables all over the world can explore the same locations. Oh, like combine Pokemon Go with RPGs, right? And you got to log in on your app, and like depending on where you are in the world, that's the monsters that you can fight. And then you and your party have to actually go drive around and find new monsters to fight. But instead of throwing Pokeballs at them, you just fight them in RPGs. Yes. So anyways, point is, some exciting stuff's coming. I said this before. I think we're going to see some interesting innovations over the next year or so, and I'm interested in it. I'm not going to play them all. I can't. It's not in my DNA to do so. I know Indestructible has one coming out, or is working with a team. I don't think it's his. I still have to check out this DC-20 game. And again, I know that Dungeon Coach, in the past, I've basically kind of thought, all right, you're just kind of taking 4E mechanics and passing them off as new things to an unsuspecting and unknowing 5E audience. But, it looks like he's working with a good team and has some interesting ideas. I don't know how much they're going to pan out, so I do need to take a look at that at some point. But again, D20, I don't know. My relationship with D20 it's strained right now. I've been playing a lot of Pathfinder 2, people, for a long time. That's like the longest I've ever played a game, like ever. We started playing 2019, and it's 2023, so what is that? 20, 21, 22, 4 years. I didn't even play 4th edition for like 4 years straight. So, we've had a couple games in between a little bit, but not like the main game. And between that and the channel and the additional games that were being run, the additional campaigns that were being run, it's just so much Pathfinder 2. And that's not even a Pathfinder 2 thing. It's more of like a, standard D&D fantasy type thing, right? Yeah. My relationship with everything is strained. Is that true, though? Let me think about that. Is my relationship with everything strained? GM Scott says, that's because I have little to no experience with Pathfinder 2. That's why you find so many flaws with it. Right. My favorite, I'm not going to go into it, but my favorite part about that is, you could actually legitimately say that about some classes in Pathfinder 2 and me. For example, I have never had a player in my group be an investigator. But the one class that I've had, It's literally been in every single one of our, not let alone our home games, our published on YouTube games. Bob played a barbarian, Kaz played a barbarian, and in our home game, we've always had a barbarian. And so the one class that I probably have like the most experience with is actually the barbarian. Oh, that's true, London. My dogs are an exception. I do not have a strained relationship with them. Miss them like crazy while I'm here in Vegas. I miss them every time I leave. But no, it's just that I get excited by innovation, and I've been playing these games for a long time, and there was a time where like what I would really search for in a game was, in a sense, nostalgia. And again, this kind of gets back to what I should say. That's a new thing for me. It comes back to what we said. I think I used to be more of like a spike player, where like I wanted to win and I viewed the game as sort of a board game. And now I'm like a Timmy, I just want to, I want to do funny shit and stupid shit and have big dumb things happen, and just, I want to feel something. That's what I'm really in for now. And so with a lot of these games, I feel something. It's just not a good feeling. It's boredom, it's disinterest, it's very easy to lose sight of your feelings during a role-playing game session. It's very easy to sort of look back and say, that wasn't terrible, but really ask yourself, like, why did I have fun? And if I did, why? Was it because I was hanging out with people I love and like? Is it because I got to shoot the shit with some nerdy friends? Or was it because of the game? Now, the game might be the excuse that gets you to get together, but then why not find a game that is also fun? So, so I for one, I was very happy to see how well that MCDM did, how much it exploded in popularity. What do we got here? That bad boy. We are in Italy, which is at the front of the Park MGM. Sort of like an Italian bistro. And they've just got all sorts of premium Italian shit, for lack of a better word. Anybody want a salami? Anyways, good stuff. It's a great town, by the way. Huge fan. So, Tuesday, I'm gonna be back. Actually, I'm taking a red eye tomorrow. We're gonna be live streaming. Mr. Smith is super busy, trying to sell the company that we work for, and get everything done there. So good for him. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be just me at home, or if Bob is free. It might be Bob and I. Got to figure it out. But it's definitely going to be a relaxed stream again for December. We're not really going to start so much too many huge new things. Still only $15 to $18 for a half sandwich. Yeah, I think that prices have mostly been pretty stable here. I mean, some things are ridiculously expensive. I had a 7 and 7 whiskey the other day, and it was like $16. Vinny, have I been to a Mega Mart in Las Vegas? I have been there once. I think the first, or I don't know. It's been a while. I want to say not recently. So I have not been. We mostly stick to the strip and the casinos and restaurants and some of the shows. I don't really do any of the other Vegas stuff. I don't rent. A lot of people come here. They rent fancy cars. They go to the strip clubs. Not that I'm against strip clubs, obviously. In my past, I have been known to dabble, but here I just don't. I don't bother with it. Things are just so out of the range, expensive for me. So, Anyways, so I'm going to wrap it up because we've been going for about an hour, and I think, hold on a sec, I got to check my watch. Yep, I've got a dinner reservation in about 15 minutes. And so we're going to go to Bavette's Steakhouse. It's a fantastic place, one of our favorites. What about the place down past Paris where robots make drinks for you? I have not been there, so that's pretty sick. I might have to check that out, GM Scott. I'll look it up. I'll Google it. Ian, do I have any big plans for the channel for 2024 in particular? Great question, Ian. Great question. Well, Ian, number one, I am, as best as I can for someone who has very little experience, I am trying to organize NightCon. And now that's not necessarily a channel thing, but I am trying to organize a convention, a get-together for our Knights of Last Call Patreon and I guess channel supporters, somewhere here in the Midwest-ish, that for like 3 or 4 days of get-together and game, so that's a big deal. And then, of course, this year we were supposed to build and deliver a table. That did not happen because I had to build and deliver my bathroom remodel. And then Bob and Aaron had a bunch of family emergencies and family stuff that came up. So we never really got a chance to kind of solidify that plan. So we were also going to be doing our road trip across the country to give the $7,000 table that we build to one of our patrons who won it last year. So those are like 2 big things for me personally. In terms of the channel, it's a great question. We know we want to get some actual plays in. Fabula Ultima is one that we really, really would love to play. Would love to sort of maybe find another game that we could play. The actual plays have not been really successful for us, but they have been, they're just a fun experience that we get to share with, all of you to get to play. Also, this is a personal challenge. We'll see how I do. YouTube's a little bit like a game, and obviously we don't play the game as hard as other people, but we like to grow, and it'd be kind of cool someday maybe to, who knows, make a living doing this or something. I don't know that could ever actually happen. But we really do think that there's value in us creating video content. Again, that's actually short. And by that I mean like under 15 minutes. Not like Knights of Last Call short, oh, that video was only 55 minutes. I mean like 15-minute videos. The problem is, how do you do that and not be like, useless? I don't know, like there's just a lot of short videos where it's like, it's just a lot of, it's a lot of hype and a lot of buzzwords, but there's not a lot of substance there. Or it's just such a small idea that it feels like they've just made it just because they needed to make a video. Yeah, Ian, so I'm playing it like a Timmy. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. Cephalopod is enjoying catching up on Root. Yeah, I mean, again, honestly, between us all, like, I don't think I can commit anyone, let alone the channel or any of my players who maybe, they sign up for, there's kind of a contract involved and money exchanges hands, it's a little professional, but like, it's really tough to do like the critical role. To do like a 30 or 40 or something session campaign is just like a 60 session campaign. It's just crazy. Critical Role gets away with it because, those people are making a lot of money to be there because they can come in and film it and they can go ahead and film 5 or 6 or 7 episodes in a week, and they can do that because that's their job. And then they have 3 weeks to go do their other hobbies or interests, or if they have other voice work or other things that they're doing to make even more money on top of the money they're making from Critical Role. That has never worked for us. And the players that I have are usually people I know, from my local area. And so not all of them are, going to be able to say, oh yeah, I can definitely commit to playing on your channel every week on a weeknight for the next year and a half. So, I think it works better for us to aim for things that are, 10 sessions or less. Because honestly, no matter what we've done, whether it was Rise of the Rune Lords, Quest for the Frozen Flame, or Root, the first stream is pretty good. And then we lose about half the people by the second stream. And then we lose half again by the third stream. And by the time you get to like the fourth or fifth stream, you're down to about 20%, 15% of your audience. And those are your dedicated, fans who are enjoying the content and they want to see you play, or they're really interested in the game. And that's great, that's cool. But at a certain point I go, I've got 10,000 subs, I've got 350 patrons. Am I really making this game for just like the 20 people who are interested in watching it? It's kind of like, you have to kind of consider maximal utility a little bit, So, Ian said, I did a 100 session stream for the entirety of Age of Ashes. I know that feel. Oh my God, I can't even imagine. Yeah, that's like really, really tough. And again, too, like, the people I play with are, again, this is a part-time thing for them and they've got other responsibilities. And so it's like, it's a little disjointed to suddenly be like, oh, this person's not here this week, or this person's not here this week, or this person's not here this week. And we even tried to get together for Rise of the Rune Lords before we went live and just record it. But then we make no money. Like, the only reason our actual plays make any amount of money is people like coming in and being part of the action and tipping, and maybe we have, Wheels of Pain or, fun goals, stream goals. And people like tipping for that stuff, and that's great because that keeps keeps us in the black. But otherwise, I might get 5 guys together, including myself, 5 people together for like 4 hours, and then we have to film to play. Then I spend another 12 to 15 hours editing, and then I publish a video to YouTube that gets 5,000 views. That's like, or maybe 4,000 views. That's like $20. Asking anybody to take up 4 hours of their time, let alone 20 hours of my time, to make $20, it's not a really great business proposition for sure. So, Beowulf says, I should look into how JP did role play, cutting up vids and releasing them in chunks. Yeah, I mean, that's something that's been talked about a million times here. I just don't know how well that would actually work, but. Beowulf, that's the other thing I will say. You said if I knew how to do it, I'd do it for free. And we would say no. That is the other thing that we do here that other channels do not do. I'm not going to say, hey, person who supports my stream and tips and gives my patron, you should do work for me too because you like the channel. No. If someone's going to do that, we are going to compensate you. And if we can't afford to compensate somebody, then we're not going to compensate. We're not going to do anybody. Yeah. So many people have offered over the years to do certain things for us for free. And for the most part, we have said no. There's a couple of people who we've said yes to, but that's because they feel more like they are, friends and family than they are like, customers or just people that, are sort of part of the exchange. So other than that, though, I try to keep. I never want to take advantage of anybody in my community, even if they are willing to do so. All right, folks, it's dinner time. I gotta go. I will be back in 2 nights, Tuesday night, and I don't know. I'll probably put up to the patrons. We'll do a vote. If you're a member of the Knights of Last Call Patreon, you can get to vote on tomorrow's topic. Again, it's December. It's kind of anything goes. I'm not really, whatever the patrons want, that's what I'm going to talk about. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me from Vegas, and I will talk to you next time on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody. Peace.